I'll give myself a little intro. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody in the royal box up there as well. And everybody online. It's really lovely to be here. What a gorgeous day. They were a little bit cold. My hands were quite cold when I took Dottie, my dog, out this morning. But it's great to be here. And thanks, Mal, for the introduction. And knowing that you were going to give me an introduction, I made sure that somewhere in the collection of things that I was going to play that's pre-recorded, that your voice pops up somewhere. So I will put my finger up at that moment when you appear. So yes, I'm here largely to talk about the mystery plays and the music, since I have been composer of the mystery plays for 4 cycles now, and this will be the 5th, the first being in 2003, though, as I'll come to tell you a bit later on, I did have a little, I dipped my toe in a bit earlier than that. So I thought what I'll do is today I'm just going to talk about those cycles and how the music happens, and how can somebody that's now writing their 5th cycle still be having to write original music and it all be still fresh. So I'll explain why that is, and why really there's never a repeat, certainly in the last 3 cycles, a repeat of any of the music. I'll come to that. I thought I might just begin just by flying through a little bit of a context of who I am and the things that I do with some of the pictures. And so that just explains myself. I'm a composer for, of course, the mystery plays, but also have composed for various theatre projects up and down the country. That happened to be Wind in the Willows at the New Vic. Musical director. There we can see one of the choirs, and that was a project that I did with bringing refugees and young children together. So there's one of the choirs, A Handbag of Harmonies, and they've been going for about the same amount of time as I've been doing music for the mystery plays. They started, well, they're 23 years old now, started just at the millennium, and there they are singing in around all the care homes. They happen to be in Blaken on that sunny, sunny day. Proud Marys. If you've got bags under my eyes, that's because I've just spent a weekend with the LGBT choir, working from, 9 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and then you have to have the social after that. And just so that I could prove that I've got the energy, I stayed up with them until about 4 in the morning, and then made sure that they were warming their voices up at 9 o'clock. And they were all there. If there are any handbags in the room, there's a lesson to you. So that's a Chester's LGBT choir that's been going for 5 years. Half of those years they've been online, as we know. All of us have been doing the same. University choir, who are just about to go off to Liverpool in a couple of weeks' time to sing Vivaldi's Gloria. I didn't compose that, Vivaldi did. But they are also bringing in one of their own pieces, which they're going to sing, which is from a piece I wrote for Alice in Wonderland. And that's a wonderful choir that meets every Thursday. Patchwork, young adults with additional needs, who I have great fun with and was with them yesterday. And also St Thomas's Church Choir, that's on the junction of Parkgate Road and Cheney Road. I joined the choir when I was 7 there, and I haven't left. So that's, but now I kind of co-run the choir there, which is a happy bunch of people which meet on Fridays. And when they were online, we didn't do any singing. We just, every week, we had to either bring in, make a chocolate eclair and bring it online, or a chocolate brownie, or I don't know, whatever else. So we learned things, and we had to show how our scones had risen and eat them on. So there was no singing, but it kept the family together. And so there's some of the projects I do, theatre and choirs, working internationally. I'm very lucky to be able to take my work sometimes abroad. I've been to places as far away as Perth, Western Australia, Yangon in Myanmar, Zanzibar, all sorts of wonderful places. And conferences where sometimes I might work with a bunch of, farmers in Somerset. They all come into a hotel, into a room, thinking they're going to have another workshop or meeting and find they've got to start singing a song by the Beatles. Never tell people that they're going to do it, but they all go away buzzing. A way of bringing people together, that's music. And have done quite a bit of performing and acting as an actor, as a singer. And an educator. There's me working in, it was in Athens with lots of students there. And just going to flick through a few more pictures. Theatre in the Quarter is also about as old as the time that I've been doing the mystery plays for. A company which I founded back in 2005, which brought together various communities, be they children, people in certain areas of Chester, refugees, and working with professional artists. There's just some of you will remember the story about the Cheshires and the Christmas truce, which we toured to various venues. There's Alice in Wonderland. There's our young people. There's our Jigsaw, which still runs every Monday night, and our teenagers, which run on a Tuesday night. That's when some of the people on their way to the Eisteddfod met up with, these were children from Upton, singing and learning an African dance in just outside the cathedral. And some of the productions, a production based on the story of the Titanic, which we did with the Hammond. Snow Queen, there's Silent Night again. A Christmas Carol, which we took out onto the streets of Chester. And Handbags created their own story, Handbag the Musical. And there's just some more, just examples of Over by Christmas, where we took the story of the departure of the soldiers and the VA nurses in 1914. In 2014, we recreated that on the streets, in various stations around Cheshire and Manchester and St Pancras. And that was 11 years ago, a lovely, lovely sunny morning in March, where we celebrated the Olympic year. Hard to believe that's 11 years ago, isn't it? There's just a few more examples of the pieces that I've done. That was March the 3rd, 2012. It was pouring with rain all morning, and then the sun came out just as what turned out to be apparently about 3,000 people, including on the city walls, if you can see. That's the amphitheatre. They're not really big people. They were the giants. Do you remember those? And there we go. And that's the Over by Christmas. And just some of the recent projects. Many will have seen the project which wasn't planned but happened on the street where I live, which was to mark the VE, which happened during lockdown. And that happened just literally because, well, there was going to be some VE celebrations in the city, couldn't do it, and we all had to remain throughout all of that time, all the rehearsals, 6 meters apart. We had costumes dropped off at our gates, and I couldn't even tie my cravat in the 1940s way because no one could come within 6 meters to 2 meters, wasn't it? Sorry, not 6 meters, 2 meters. So we all had to dress ourselves because we couldn't have anybody help us do the hair right or whatever else. And all the filming and everything that we did was all 2 meters apart. What My Journey was the piece where we brought some refugees to tell their story of their journey and combined those with 700 children in Chester. Christmas Street was a little story, again, a lockdown story that you can see online. A fictitious story about a little boy who heard that a grumpy old man wouldn't turn on the lights on their street. So we went on a journey to find that street. It's a lovely little story which brought together some of the different groups that I'm involved in. And this most recently was the story where we went and spoke to a lot of people about the people who were old enough to remember. I don't think there's anybody here old enough to remember the coronation, the other coronation, and their stories of just growing up and life and whatever to collect wisdom. And our teenagers created then a film, which again is online, called Our Jubilee. And there I am. That was a very quick moment of me on the Town Hall Square. Which brings us to the Chester Mystery Plays. There's the piano back at home where all the kind of magic is created. This year, I have to say, because things happen very differently, the mystery plays, though they were written, we believe, way back in the 14th, 15th century, and we believe by the monks, and then got translated into English, and so then it was an opportunity to bring them out to the people in the street who wouldn't be able to understand Latin in the cathedral, and to make these stories relevant and interesting. All the different guilds were given a job to do. Well, they were given a job and a barrel of beer each, I think. I might be making this up. So the shipbuilders, here you go, you've got 3 weeks. Can you create the story of, or recreate the story of Noah's Ark? Here's a barrel of beer to get on with your rehearsals and your writing. And the ironmongers, can you create the story of the crucifixion? Because you can make the nails. Bakers, can you tell the story of the Last Supper? Because you can bake the bread. And so, as you will know, a lot of the stories are they're quite interesting interpretations of the Bible story. There isn't really a stubborn Noah's wife, as far as I know, in the Bible. And there are all sorts of other beautiful intricacies that we find in the Chester Mystery Plays. And because the Mystery Plays held out much longer than anywhere else, we've got the biggest cycle of stories. And they are the fall of Lucifer, to begin with, and creation, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah's flood, which sometimes takes us to an interval when we do the full thing. But occasionally we could have to squeeze in, whoops, I've gone a bit too fast there. Oh yeah, Nativity, the shepherds, Magi and innocents, temptation, healing, blind man and Lazarus. I think sometimes the interval, well, this time round, the interval is going to come after the Magi and innocents. So imagine all those plays that we've got to squeeze in to 1 hour, 10 minutes maybe. And the second half starting with temptation, healing. Then we move on to Judas, which is the whole arrival in Jerusalem, the Last Supper, the trial, the crucifixion, the harrowing of hell, resurrection, ascension, the Antichrist, and the final judgment. That's a lot of stories. And not every time do we use all those stories. This time, I think the Antichrist is being missed out, but most of the other plays are in there, unless we get to about early June and realize that it's about 3 hours long, in which case we might cut something out. I don't think we will. So there's all those different stories, all of which could be, say, around about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes long. And what's happened since I've been involved, though it's not my doing, is that is rather than a different company, like the guilds back in the medieval times, a different company would tell those stories. Now, a whole company tell the whole story, making it more cohesive. So they are the stories. And with each of those stories comes a very different flavor and a different kind of feel to the music. And I'm just going to explain here why when I compose the music, how do I get the inspiration for brand new music? And it's two things, really. One, the director's adaptation and vision. Now, in 2003 and 2008, it was the same director and actually the same adaptation. And so it was just, that was the most difficult for me. I know, Mal, you were involved in that. It was difficult because there wasn't a lot of new things coming in, and so it was quite hard for me to be creating lots of new music. But in 2013 and 18, we had a different script writer who would take things and adapt things and perhaps bring in texts from different Bibles to offer me to write music. But the director always has a vision, and that might be a huge change. We're not outside anymore, we're inside. We can have lots of live instruments where we couldn't have those outside. So everything changes, and that's one of the main things that affects how I write the music. But also singers and musicians. I get to meet lots of different singers, I get to meet lots of different kinds of musicians, and, well, I just have to arrange according to the musicians that I meet. And I meet all sorts of interesting musicians, people who play, yes, string instruments and brass, and people who can play and are allowed to play the cathedral organ. But then we've got somebody who plays the hurdy-gurdy, and we've got somebody who plays the didgeridoo. And so somehow or other, if I possibly can, I try and involve all those instruments, at least at some part of the plays. And so what kind of music? Big epic choral sounds. I'll play a little example from way back in 2003. The first words that God utters is ego sum alpha et omega. I am the beginning and the end. And this is a recording of the 2003 company singing ego sum alpha et omega. Because that was outside, that wasn't a real orchestra. That was all created. I'd love to have had real musicians outside, but of course, well, in 2003, for those who remember, we had 3 full weeks, and it was glorious sunshine. Bar, well, 2, but 1 main performance when it absolutely, the heavens opened and there were disciples flying across the stage. Even an ambulance had to come in and bring somebody who'd had quite a nasty fall. And in 2008, the weather was very, very different, which is probably what led us to think that, right, we perhaps need to be inside because it was quite a nasty summer. It was cold, if anybody remembers being there. Gospel. Well, this year, John Young, the director, who many made, if you went to see Romeo and Juliet, he directed that at the Grosvenor Park, and he is directing this time a really exciting vision. And he said to me, Matt, when it comes to the second half, and we've got the temptation, the life of Christ, the healing, I want this whole gospel feel. So he is the light of the world. Is feeling a bit more like this. Let's see. He is the light of the world. He is the light of the world. Let's give him all the praise. The praise. We will follow him. And there's all this sort of stuff going on. I'm seeing some members here who are just starting to have to do all that, aren't you, Linda? Clapping your hands and moving around. So he said, I want gospel. And no director before has said, I want it to have a gospel feel. So that is a bit of a challenge for me, having to listen to lots of gospel music and set some words. Using the incredible space. Well, the cathedral is an amazing space, and probably the most challenging of cathedrals is the Anglican Cathedral in Liverpool, where we've taken the music to, where I think there's a 7-second delay, so I can't do really, really fast music because it'll all go, all mess around. So I have to be careful that the music isn't too lively, so it's not too mishmashy. But in the cathedral, we can, and I'm hoping to, the way that John set this up this time, if that's the big west door and that's the altar and the east and the organs there, the audience will all be sitting looking inwards into quite a small aisle, which is kind of like a street in Chester with stages either side. So everything's going to go past people, and you will only be about, if you're at the back, you'll only be 3 rows away from the action. And if you're on the front, I think you'll be practically sitting with the disciples as they're having their Last Supper. So it's going to be really, really, really exciting. And being able to use that space, it'd be nice to have some sound or some voices coming from far away, maybe even in the cloisters. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But the music is there to drive the story forward and to really accentuate those dramatic moments. Often it's not sung. We might just have a cello, which is going to create a haunting underscore to some of the music, to some of the scenes. This time round, John's wanting a lot of powerful rhythmic stuff. We've had that in the past. We've used Caramba Samba, who, when we were outside and they were recreating the flood, people in Huntington were telling me that they also felt they could hear it. So there we go. And a diversity of instruments, as I've explained, and I've probably got a picture coming up of all the different instruments that have been involved in the plays. And this is how people can be involved this time in singing and in playing instruments. And if they're singing, they can be in the chorus, they can be a soloist, and I've got a few people have auditioned to be a soloist, or they can be in a small group. And if they're playing instruments, they can play strings. We've got a string player here, 2 or 3. Woodwind, guitar, harp, organ, brass, percussion, and I put world instruments, but also medieval instruments. So there's a whole range of instruments that are involved. So going back to oh my goodness, that's supposed to say 2003. Oh dear. 2003 was on the Cathedral Green. Robin Goddard was the director of that, and we were outside. And I played you one example of the music from then. Another example of the music, perhaps, was the Dies Irae, which was used in a number of places. For example, when Lucifer was cast down into hell, and I think it was also used when Cain was murdering Abel. And this is a little glimpse of that. And as you can hear there, I'm using Latin text. Sometimes I use the words that are actually in the. Sometimes I use the words that are in the text. So I've set the whole of Noah in the past, the text of Noah, into a musical, and sometimes just borrowing text that isn't in the actual script, but might be Gloria in excelsis Deo, for example, at the Nativity. There's all sorts of, or maybe in the case of Deborah McAndrew, who did I'll come to that, the 2018 version, she did all that work for me. I didn't have to worry about that. She said, this is the bit in Temptation, I want to use this text. And that was great then, because I could hear the music already. Whereas sometimes, as in this case, I'm having to think through the words and find the words. Will it be something from Latin text? Will it be something else? And I'm working with John on that as we go along. I've put 2018, I don't know why. But anyway, that's 2008. I was at the Cathedral Green. And that was another big outside performance. And I've got a little pastiche of the music. And Mal, who introduced me, the piece that you were Elizabeth, weren't you? And so there's a little snippet, it just pops up just for a couple of seconds, see if I can find it, of the 2008. So this is a pastiche, let me see if I can find it, of 2008 music. Here we go. Noah.
Birds will fly, they must go too, hence firefly.
The child did stir inside of me, for great joy of thy company.
Ordinary prison house, we never saw thee cold.
And keep them in memory, for we have shown here today God's will to man.
Oh, there you go. And there's the sound of a really appreciative audience. We did end 2008's half-time with Noah, which had hundreds of children involved, and of course it was a brilliant kind of ending. In 2003, we made the mistake of having Noah, and there's people were up on there standing up applauding, and then we had to have Cain and Abel, which was a tiny little place. So it was like, so we realized that things like the smaller plays need to happen, not at the end of an act. And then we moved, there we go, 2013, that's correct. We moved indoors for 2013. Peter Leslie Wilde was the director, and Stephanie Dale adapted it. And she did a controversial adaptation of the Antichrist using a parallel with the race day at Chester. I'm not sure the racecourse were too happy with it, but and so I had to do a whole kind of it's race day in Chester, which was great fun. But like I say, I'm not sure whether the racecourse were too happy with how we were conveying race day in Chester. And then 2018 was also in the Cathedral Nave. Again, it was Peter Leslie Wilde, but he worked hard to create a very different vision, and Deborah McAndrew adapted the plays again, using the original kind of language, which was quite challenging, and Peter worked hard to make sure that everything was very, very clear as possible, but I was given lots of text to set music to. There's often a main theme. We heard Ego Sum Alpha from 2003. This time, in 2018, it was Adam Lei Bounden. It's some text which you've heard carols based on that text. The idea that everything came from Adam. And so there was a piece which went, Adam lay bounden in a pond. 4,000 winters thought he not too long, and all was for an apple that he took, which we had as a big choir singing, sometimes a soloist, and it kept popping up. I think it's very important to have themes which we keep hearing and coming back to. I'll come to what's happening in 2023, because there are themes which we'll keep coming back to and used in very, very different ways. So that was 2018. And here we are, this time round, Cathedral Nave, John Young. There's nobody adapting it, except John's done it himself, and that's down to funding and whatever else, but he's quite happy with that, because if a director wants to put cuts in or change things or whatever else, the director then has to consult with the adapter or the writer. John can do cuts and go, there you go, I've done it, and I'm the only person that needs to make those decisions. And that's quite good, I guess, in the rehearsal room. So we're just, watch this space, because of course this is all going to evolve through the next few months, ready for June when we open. You don't need to, this is the score. So I do a score which is much more simple. You don't need to read this. It's much more simple for the choir, but this is a kind of an example of the full score when I've got bassoons and clarinets and flutes and trumpets and whatever doing the opening theme for this year. And this year, one of the main themes is I am great, God gracious. So it's using the English language. And John said to me at the beginning, what we want this time is, rather than anything kind of mystical, we want God to arrive in a big coronation type thing. And that's probably a bit of a nod to what's coming up in May. I've done a mock-up. The instrumentalists hear a kind of version of what it should sound like, and I've done that using my keyboard. So the opening will sound something like this. Let me see if I can find it. This is the opening that you'll hear in June. And then we get, I am great, God gracious. Great God gracious. Oh, the mirth of the majesty is magnified in me, is magnified in me. Big, broad sound, which has got a little nod to. Does anybody recognize those chords? It's. So I had a late night last night. I can't remember. It's Queen's Coronation. Zadok the priest. Yes. So I just thought, if I use those chords, that will evoke that kind of coronation feel. But if I was to, and there's the score that the choir read. So we've got sopranos and altos and tenors and basses. It might be that at one point, maybe when God's not feeling quite so gracious, when Cain has murdered Abel, when God sees all the sinners before he decides to have the flood, we might have a moment where the theme is very different, same tune, but I am great, God gracious. Whole different theme. All the mirth of the majesty. So it can have a very, very different feel. And my intention is that those certain themes will keep coming in and just remind us. For example, there's another one when Mary first finds out that she is going to give birth to the Son of God. She sings a little bit on her own. My heart is light. My heart is light. God bless my Son, my Lord. And that's at the moment when she realizes. And then perhaps at the birth, if we can squeeze it in, my heart is light. My heart is light. God bless my Son, my Lord. But of course, then we might hauntingly hear that theme as she's at the cross. So it might be, her heart is light. Her heart is light. God bless her Son, our Lord. So we hear that theme coming in different ways, and it's quite powerful when it returns. Although I am insisting, I say to John, we can't just hear it then. We need to hear it a couple of times more before it, so that it has that real gravitas at the crucifixion. But so it's a little fight between me and John, a lovely fight. We get on very, very well. In fact, also, we live near each other, and we've both got dogs. So I say, can we meet in the morning and take our dogs for a walk? And then I say, John, can we have that piece again? So that's quite a useful thing at the moment. And there's a little piece that I'm composing for the birth as well. And again, it's music that I've taken from the text. The miracle that you see here is of God's own power. And trying to make them, and John was insistent, let's make things easy to hear, as though people have heard them before, just like when ABBA had a new hit, you always thought you'd heard it before. And repetitive, so the miracle that you see here goes like this. This miracle that you see here, this miracle that you see here, this miracle that you see here is of God's own power. This miracle that you see, this miracle that you see here. And I bet if I said to you, could you sing this miracle that you could all do it. Have a go. And this miracle that you see here, you know it already, okay? And that's the idea. It's to create something that is new, but that you'll go away and it's just simple tunes like, I am great, God gracious. Nothing too complicated, just a simple tune which you carry through the play. Always my aim with any music that I create is that it has, that you remember the tunes. Because that's a challenge for a composer, is to write tunes which are memorable when you first hear them. And I always really try and make sure, and often I don't sit at the piano and write. And I'll tell you, actually, this is the truth. This year, I was so stressed about how am I going to find time to create all this music, because it's all, through no one's fault, it's all arrived quite late on my doorstep, all the text and what's wanted. And it was about October, and I think, oh, I've got Christmas and all the things to do. I don't know where I'm going to compose all this music. So I've been getting up every morning at 6 o'clock and going swimming at 6:30 at the arena. Is there any coast swimmers here? No, okay. And I don't count my lengths or anything like that. I just wake up in the morning, I think, right, okay, Noah's Ark. Okay, and then I get into the swimming pool and I just think through Noah, and that's all I do for 35 minutes. It's always a bit of a problem if somebody else is in my lane, because then I have to concentrate on getting out of the way. But mainly, I'm just thinking through a tune that comes in, get straight home, don't talk to anybody, don't look at my phone, get straight upstairs, and I write that bit. Next morning, okay, the slaughtering of the innocents, okay, and not a nice thing to think about when you swim, but still, I do that, come home, straight in, and I compose. And so what I was doing throughout the kind of mornings in November is just creating that one. When I came to January, and I'd got about, 14, 15, 16, 17 pieces, because it was all in the morning, before then I switched on my phone at 9 o'clock and got on with the proper day, I was thinking, did I actually write all these things? I can't remember writing them, because they were all so early in the morning. But I've suddenly discovered how good it is to do work at 6:45 or 10 past 7. There we go. A brand new piece. So John, here's an example, Crucify Him. John gave me an example of a modern musical, and he said, I want it to be really, like people know it already. The theme for the crowd singing Crucify Him. So I looked at words from the text. I said, what do you want me to do, Latin or whatever? And he said, it's got to be simple. So I've come up with this. There's a little hint of Carmina Burana in it. It's always good to have familiar chord patterns. And it goes like this. Take him, judge him, strip him, doom him, man of misery. Place a crown of thorns upon him, nail him to the tree, and so on. So already that tune, and you can hear the... So I'm not copying, but I'm taking a little chord there, and And so John gave me, he said, it's got to be simple, it's got to be this, and we worked through it. But that, for example, that you can imagine that as it comes to the kind of final moment of the trial, but maybe earlier on, when Judas first sees Jesus doing what he did in the temple, and those ideas come into his head, we might hear echoes of, take him, judge him, strip him, doom him, man of misery. So we start to get that feeling, and then that can build up, more pervasive drums, maybe the organ, who knows, we don't know, we haven't got to that bit yet. But that's just an idea, and how that will become the pervasive theme that will carry us through the whole trial. And Light of the World, I've already played that, that's the gospel piece, and that carries through into, the light of the world, he is the light of the world, and into also the Hosanna's got the same thing, kind of, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest, oh, Hosanna. And now that changes into the Crucify Him theme. So these are all yet to be discovered in rehearsals. Just a few pictures from the past. That's my brother, back in 2013, when everyone got thrown into to hell. And I can tell you now, everybody wants, when there's a choice, the whole company, to go up these boring steps to heaven or get thrown into hell by all of Lucifer's helpers. They all want to do that. In fact, some of them would get thrown and then quickly run round so they could get thrown in again. It's not like that in real life, is it? But anyway, I'm talking about theatre here. And this was a moment when we had the organ, drums, and my brother was playing big electric guitar, this big theme, as everybody was getting thrown into the furnace. Some beautiful drawings of the 2013 rehearsals. There's some of the instruments, just an example of some of the instruments that were there, from guitars to hurdy-gurdy, to organ, to violin, to timpani, saxophone. It's not a full orchestra, it's just whatever we got, and there's a hurdy-gurdy there at bottom left. There's just put some quotes. I was being a bit self-indulgent here, looking for some of the quotes that had come in from some of the reviews. My favourite of all was Matt Baker's music unites heaven and earth. What an amazing thing to have on your CV. And terrific score ranges from pub sing-alongs to majestic choruses. And indeed, there was almost a pub sing-along at the beginning of Noah's, the amount of sinning that was going on in 2013 before Noah decides to create the flood was a pub sing-along. I'm not sure how I felt about that, but anyway. Northern Soul said, the solo and choral singing is at times out of this world. Music director and composer Matt Baker makes the most of the incredible acoustics, running the gamut from affecting vocal solos to total cacophony. I look at these things, by the way, and actually I get stressed when I look at them because I think, actually, I've got to try and create those sorts of things again. And so I'm never complacent. I'm saying that with my heart beating. The stage said Matt's original music is delivered courtesy of an effective celestial chorus. The compliment there goes to all the lovely singers that come from all walks of life and join us every time we do it. And now King, Prince Charles, there's Danny, one of our cellists, and he listened to Yet Hope I. It's the piece we used when Jesus was being brought down from the cross, which he described as intensely beautiful. And I thought I might just play that if I could. So this is from 2013, and we have used since in the Passion, which I'll talk about. So this is at the point of Jesus having died on the cross and going into Mary's arms. And even though he wasn't at the performance, we gave him a special performance when he came to Chester. This is Yet Hope I from 2013, and the cellist you can hear is Danny there, who had the honor of meeting the future king. I need to turn it up. So Peter, this piece was quite late in in being created, because Peter said, it's going to take a long time to get Jesus down from the cross, just practically, Jesus down from the cross, and to take him into, so we need a big piece of music. And he said to Stephanie, we need some words, and so Stephanie created those beautiful, beautiful words, yet hope I that the sun will rise again, S-U-N. Peter said to me, strictly, I want it to be just like 2-3 chords at the most. It's got to be really simple, almost Negro spiritual. And so with that kind of restriction on what I could do, I came up with that. So sometimes it's great to have, some people say that an agapanthus grows more beautifully in a tight pot, doesn't it? And same thing, if you just say, right, I want this, it's got to be in that key, 3 chords, and don't be fancy with it, then that sometimes makes you become more creative. And I just wanted to say that in between the Chester Mystery Plays, there have been other things that we've done that have taken parts of the Mystery Plays and kind of kept it in people's minds in the city. And the City Passion is something that we took on a few years ago, actually. We've done it 3 times now, where we just take the trial, well, Judas and the trial and the crucifixion, and leave the resurrection out because we play it on Good Friday. So just give a bit of a glimpse of what might happen, and take it to the streets. There's no city better than Chester to tell a story like this, because we've got the galleries, we've got the rows, we've got the Town Hall Square, we've got a big gate to come through, the East Gate, and so it's just the perfect place to tell the story of the Passion. And so there's the crucifixion. There's last year, Jesus, played by a wonderful guy called Matt, and probably the first occasion of its kind since COVID, where suddenly the streets on Good Friday were filled with that many people. And there they were last year, and that's them looking down at the crucifixion. And that was 5-6 years ago. You see the instruments start off just a merry band of instruments, accordions and recorders and whatever, and that was the Last Supper. Again, what a beautiful setting for the Last Supper to take place. Other things that have happened are Noah's flood, which we've done in the amphitheatre, and creation. I have got, I'll perhaps set that up in just a moment. It's just to give you a flavour of just to give you how the mystery plays, you can get tickets and whatever else. But rehearsals are at the moment every week. On Tuesday night, tonight, I meet with the instrumentalists, and so we've got our trumpeters and our saxophonists, and I'm working with those on Tuesday night. On Friday night, I meet with the full chorus, where we're learning all the music. And Thursdays and Sundays, the director is directing the plays, and I'm either with him on my own without those musicians and chorus, trying things out, and then making changes and cuts, and then eventually, as we get towards Easter and after, putting it all together. And also from the chorus, there are a few soloists and a few small groups. It's all evolving, and anything that I've written, and the things that I've played you from this year, some things might be reduced massively, might be expanded massively. I came home from my residential with the Proud Marys for a 3-hour rehearsal of the Slaughtering of the Innocents, and I was going, let me turn that up. For 3.5 hours on Sunday, and I realized, oh my goodness, I've got to write more to that because it's the same chords over again. But then once it's rehearsed, we'll realize that actually what was 3.5 hours in rehearsal will be about 2 minutes 20 or whatever. So I don't know how long the music is for anything. That all kind of keeps changing. I hope I've given you a bit of an overview of music, and I've left a little bit of time, I think. Let me just double check. Yes. If anybody has any questions for me, which hopefully I'll be able to answer.
Have the Mysteries ever had a female god?
Have the Mysteries ever had a female god? Yes, they have. They've had, I think there's a female god right here. Is that right, Linda? You were a god at one point? Yes. There's been a female god, and that was in the year where there was different ages and generations, and male, female. There were different gods. This year, God is deliberately being played by a man and a woman together. So, which is quite an interesting departure. So, yeah, it has, and I think. And all those characters, all the other characters, apart from Jesus, actually, I think, have been played by women. I cast all the disciples as women on the Passion one year. But God, yes, God's been played by a woman together with a man.
Okay. Can I ask you about professional actors? Do you ever use professional actors?
So, there are different mystery plays. York and Coventry, and there's lots of others, smaller ones as well. And they all have a slightly different way of running. What happens in Chester is it's billed as the largest professionally led community theatre activity in the country. So there's professionals who are leading, composing, arranging, directing, whatever else, and it's a community company. Whereas, for example, I remember in Coventry, they had professional actors and a community chorus. York's different, has different versions. That's not to say that what happens in Chester is there are some have been some professional actors who have, just because they live in Chester or near Chester, have said, well, I want to give of my time and be in this. And also, being involved in the mystery plays has often inspired people to go off and train and become professional actors. So that's been the case quite a few times over. But nobody's paid to be an actor in the mystery plays. Any
more questions?
Any more questions?
Here we go.
Thank you for such a dynamic and exciting talk, Matt. I've not attended one like this before, or anything about you before. I'm interested in thinking of all those years when you've created different plays, different works. Does that become a legacy? Could those be used in the future, but when you leave or retire or anything like that?
I don't know. Well, what's often the carrot is often dangled to me by the powers that be, saying, "Matt, could you just do it one more time? And if you want to, you can use your music. That you don't have to write any more." And I always think to myself, well, sometimes it's actually harder to bring back music from a time before and fit it into a new vision. It just might not necessarily fit. So every time I come to it, I think, well, it's a brand new piece of theatre. It's the mystery plays, but a new vision, new staging, and whatever else. But then interestingly, I hadn't listened to some of the music that I've created for quite some time until I was preparing this speech today, and I was like, oh, that was a good piece, and that was a good... And some people come up to me, not even just with mystery plays, but other things, and sing, I've got, teenagers come up to me and sing a song that they learned when they were 8, when they were in the Children's Theatre Company, and they said, do you remember this? And I went, oh, yes, it's what because I do write... So maybe, I don't know, maybe a nice legacy would to have a whole batch of pieces. Sadly, such is the scale and the pressure to get these things up, that 2013 and 18, we never actually recorded the music. I've got them scored out, should anybody ever want to use them again. But Yet Hope I, we did record subsequently. But I don't know whether there will be a legacy. If I was composer for Oberammergau, that's the big thing up in there, well, they still play and perform the same music that was written when it was first staged to thank God for them all being delivered from the plague. So that music as I understand, keeps coming back every time. With the mystery plays, we have just different ways, a different set of Chester people telling the story in a slightly different way, and therefore comes new music. So I don't know. It's there. If anybody wants it, it's there. I've got it in my bottom drawer.
Okay, another question over this side.
Thank you, Matt, for a fascinating presentation. Just wondering how much time you will actually have to do a full dress rehearsal in the cathedral itself before you actually start live.
So the rehearsals at the moment are building up towards what will be a period in when we get to... So we open the end of June, about 27th, 28th of June. So going backwards, we will have about 3 dress rehearsals on the 3 nights leading up to that. And before that, we'll have almost a week of tech. So that means we have to go from one bit to the next to make sure all the lighting cues are right, that the sound's right, that we can pick up the violin then, and we can hear that there. We can hear, because the actors are all making their way through along this street, if you like. So there's lots of stuff that will happen with tech, which can be very, very testing and very boring for a company, because they're having to literally, we might do one play in one night, and they're just sitting there because we're trying to program in all the lights and whatever else. So... but the dress rehearsals have to run beginning to end without a stop. And then prior to that, before we go into tech and everything really slows down, then we're doing full runs in one of our rehearsal spaces. So it'll feel all exciting then, and then it'll slow down massively before suddenly we have to do it again in dress. So the whole period so most of June will be really cranking up to that point. And in fact, we open for about 2 or 3 nights before we have the proper big opening. So we have what's called previews. That's what tends to happen in theatre now, preview nights. It means come and pay slightly less and expect that things might go not quite 100% right.
Thank you.
So, somebody here?
Thank you for your talk. And thank you for all you've done for Chester, by the way. Where are the musicians going to be? Which end are they going to? I'm wondering where to get tickets for.
Well, this has always been different every time we do it. Last year, in 2018, the last cycle, the musicians on the whole were at the top of this big tower on show the whole time, crammed into this space. But they were there, not always lit, but always just at the very top. People could see what was going on. And there was quite a few grumbles because they said, well, we can't be passing around jelly babies and we can't do the crossword in between. Which, if you go to a West End show and the orchestra is sort of hidden somewhere, I was once involved in one of those conducting, and they're all doing their word searches and whatever else. I'm like, we're about to start another song, but they get like that, and they're ready to start. We were on show the whole time, whereas back in 2013, we were sort of slightly off. What I think's happening this time is a lot of the musicians will be out of view in the South Transept. That's where the big Gaia globe has been. But I know that John's already said, right, for that big bum, 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 when we get the big coronation moment, he wants to see on the tower some of those instrumentalists. So they'll be used at times. We'll be bringing out instrumentalists as and when. Chorus, similarly, sometimes are in view, sometimes out of view. It's always quite a tricky thing to do. I have to be careful to manage expectations when the chorus are learning. I'm not saying, and you're going to be on stage in front of everybody, because you might be singing into lots of pick-up microphones off stage. It just all depends. I'll be hidden, but I'll be on there'll be a camera on me so that people in different parts of the cathedral that are performing or singing can see me go, or whatever else.
I think that's all. Thank you very much, Matt. Did you want to play something else? Was there...
Okay, there we go. It's quite a dynamic, it's a wonderful logo, isn't it, I think? And that's the logo. There's just some real quick details. Written written by the scholars in the 14th century, performed in public by the guilds, banned in the 16th century. Chester has the most complete collection, revived in 51, which is the Festival of Britain, performed every 5 years, and there we go, 200 plus volunteer cast and crew, 7,000 audience, 19 shows, 28th of June to the 15th of July. There's the team this year. So there's our designer, our choreographer, designer. John's there right in the middle, if you can see. And our lighting designer, and myself. There's a support team, all sorts of people. These are all the paid people, if you like, stage managers, children's officer, props manager, and whatever else, PR. And lots of stitchers. And there is the information if people want to buy tickets.
But that was fascinating, entertaining, absolutely wonderful. I think what we've just seen is the definition of a polymath. You know, someone who really can do pretty well everything. I was so relieved to hear right at the beginning that there's one thing he can't do, and that's dress himself.
No.
I felt a little bit better at that moment. But Matt, thank you very, very much. It's only every 5 years. We perhaps ought to get you back in between, not wait another 5 years, because that was really, really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.